Aotearoa, and welcome to Monday's Economy Watch, where we follow the economic events and trends that affect Aotearoa. I'm David Chaston, and this is the international edition from interest.co.nz, and today we lead with news. This week we may start to see some hard data from the US and how the Trump insurgency is affecting the world's largest economy. Already sentiment surveys seem pretty negative. For us, the week ahead will be dominated by the March quarter financial system data releases from the RBNZ on Wednesday. Internationally, we'll remain trapped watching the chaotic policy changes from Washington and trying to assess how they impact us. Wall Street's earnings season's releases will also be a big influence, especially results from big tech. And the Americans will release their first quarter 2025 GDP results, PCE inflation data, and their ISM PMI survey results. And at the end of the week, we'll get the April non-farm payroll results for the US labour market. And the Bank of Japan is scheduled to review its monetary policy, and they are unlikely to make any changes in the fog of uncertainty around trade policies. Australia will release its first quarter 2025 CPI data, an expected dip to 2.2%, and China will release its official PMI survey results. Over the weekend, China said its March industrial profits were better than expected, but private sector profits slipped again. However, overall profits rose 0.8% from a year ago. Also better were foreign company profits, were up 2.8% on the same basis. China said they're adding another 500 billion yuan in medium-term lending facility funding. This is the second month they've pushed out substantial additional liquidity in this way. And China says more than 120 million people have benefited from their old for new consumer goods trade-in subsidy program, driving sales of more than 720 billion yuan. And the bullshit meter is on high alert after Trump said, we're meeting with China on tariffs, comments aimed at soothing jittery financial markets. But Chinese officials say no talks have taken place. In fact, China cancelled some large pork and soybean orders to US suppliers. American farmers not only have to bear the brunt of trade policy gone rogue, but they're also battling rogue weather. Singapore said its industrial production rose in March, a bounce back from a weak February result, but the recovery wasn't as strong as analysts had expected. Across the Pacific, US initial jobless claims fell last week to 209,700 and to the level expected, but seasonal effects suggested this reduction should have been larger. There are now 1.89 million people on these benefits, still higher than a year ago. This is despite federal pressure on states to deny long-term undocumented workers access to benefits. New durable goods orders jumped in March by 10.9%, the largest rise in 7 months. Capital goods orders rose by 24.1%. But non-defence, non-aircraft capital goods orders were only up 1.8%. This is probably why the March or April PMIs didn't note a general rise in factory orders. US existing home sales fell by 5.9% in March from February to be 2.4% lower than a year ago. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Fed factory survey reported lower activity, higher costs, and unchanged order levels. Nationally, the Chicago Fed's National Activity Index reported a small slip in March. This is consistent with the overall Fed Beige Book monitoring. And finally, for the US, the University of Michigan sentiment survey for April was 8.4% lower than for March, 32% weaker than a year ago. These are big drops. Year-ahead inflation expectations surged from 5% in March to an unusually high level of 6.5% in April. This is the highest reading since 1981. North of the border, Canada reported February retail sales, and they slipped from January to be 2.1% ahead of year-ago levels. This data is volume data, so that's a real increase. And it's election day in Canada. That's tonight, New Zealand time. There's been a notable surge in early voting. Official data for this was released a week ago, and that showed 7.3 million electors had voted in advance at that stage. This is a 25% increase from the 5.8 million electors who voted in advance at the last federal general election in 2021. They have 27.6 million eligible voters this time. And the US Treasury 10-year yield is now at 4.25% and up 1 basis point from this time Saturday. And the price of gold will start today at $3,318 an ounce, up $28 from Saturday. Oil prices have held from Saturday to be still just over $63 a barrel in the US, while the international Brent price is now just under $67 a barrel. And the Kiwi dollar is now at 59.6 US cents, down 10 basis points from Saturday at this time. Against the Aussie, we're down 10 basis points at 93.2 Australian cents. Against the euro, we're unchanged at 52.5 euro cents. That all means our trade-weighted index starts today still just on 68 and unchanged from Thursday, but up 40 basis points from a week ago. And the Bitcoin price starts today at $94,238 and down 0.8% from Saturday. Volatility over the past 24 hours has again been low at plus or minus 0.7%. You can find links to the articles mentioned today in our show notes, and you can get more news affecting the economy in New Zealand from interest.co.nz. Kia ora, I'm David Chaston, and we'll do this again tomorrow.